It was close to midnight, and I was already regretting taking the night shift. The squad car's engine hummed beneath me as I parked on a desolate street corner, sipping lukewarm coffee and keeping one eye on the empty road ahead. Calls were light that night, but the radio had buzzed with a curious report an hour earlier. A woman had called in, screaming about something in the woods just off County Road 53. I'd brushed it off as drunken paranoia. This area was known for its share of overzealous late-night callers. Still, I was restless. My hands tapped against the steering wheel as I contemplated checking it out. Then the call came through the radio again, this time more urgent. Dispatch repeated it twice. Something about a vehicle seen parked at the tree line. No driver in sight. I sighed, tossing the coffee into the cup holder, and flipped on the lights. I figured at worst it was a car thief or some teenagers up to no good. The drive out was uneventful. Dark trees pressed against either side of the winding road, their branches clawing at the night sky like skeletal fingers. The further I drove, the more my chest tightened. Something about the isolation felt different tonight. When I pulled up to the site, I immediately spotted the car in question. A beat-up old Chevy sitting at an odd angle, as if it had rolled slightly into a shallow ditch. I scanned the area, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the thick woods, but there was no sign of anyone, just trees and shadows. I radioed in. Cars here, but no sign of a driver. Plate matches the call. I'm gonna check it out. The dispatcher's reply was crackly but clear. Copy that. Be careful. I approached the Chevy cautiously, my flashlight illuminating the dirt-streaked windows. The interior was empty except for a crumpled fast food bag and what looked like a child's stuffed animal on the passenger seat. No signs of struggle, but no obvious reason why someone would abandon their car here, either. I was about to write it off as a simple breakdown when I heard it. A faint sound. A crunch. Like footsteps on dried leaves. Police. If someone's out there, make yourself known. My voice echoed through the trees, but no reply came. The crunching stopped. I stood there, ears straining, my hand drifting toward the holster on my belt. The silence stretched, broken only by the occasional chirp of crickets. Just as I was about to turn back to the car, the sound came again. Closer this time. A deliberate, dragging step, as if someone or something was testing the boundaries of my patience. I pivoted, shining the flashlight into the woods. The beam caught nothing but tangled branches and undergrowth. And yet, I swear I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. A flash of pale skin, gone as quickly as it appeared. Show yourself. I barked again, this time unholstering my firearm. The flashlight trembled slightly in my hand. I stepped toward the tree line, every nerve in my body on high alert. Then I saw it. At first, I thought it was a person. Tall and hunched, standing unnaturally still between two trees about 20 feet away. But as my light settled on it, my stomach turned to ice. Its face, if you could call it that, was featureless, pale, and stretched, as though someone had pressed a sheet of flesh over a human skull and forgotten to carve out the details. No eyes, no mouth, just smooth, alien emptiness. I froze, my gun aimed directly at its center mass. "Don't move," I shouted, though I had no idea what I was dealing with. The thing didn't flinch, didn't react at all. It just stood there, its long, bony arms hanging at its sides. And then it moved, not with the clumsiness of a person, but with a strange, fluid speed that defied logic. 1 second it was 20 feet away. The next, it was less than 10. My finger tightened on the trigger as adrenaline surged through me. "Stop," I yelled, but my voice sounded small against the pounding of my own heartbeat. The thing tilted its head, as though curious, and then it did something I'll never forget. It raised one hand, a spindly, claw-like thing, and pointed at me. No, not at me, past me. I turned and my blood ran cold. Behind me, just beyond the car, another figure stood, identical to the first, and then another, and another. They emerged from the woods like shadows peeling away from the darkness, all moving in that same unnatural, jerking motion. My breath caught as they surrounded the car, their faceless heads swiveling toward me in perfect unison. I didn't wait. I fired. 3 shots echoed through the trees, but the figures didn't react. Not even a twitch. It was like the bullets passed right through them. My training kicked in, and I did the only thing I could think of. I ran. My boots pounded against the dirt as I sprinted back to my squad car, my flashlight swinging wildly. I fumbled with the door handle, throwing myself inside and slamming it shut just as one of the figures reached the edge of the clearing. I didn't look back as I threw the car into reverse, gravel spraying beneath the tires as I peeled out onto the road. My hands shook as I gripped the wheel, the squad car's engine roaring as I sped away from the scene. When I finally reached the station, drenched in sweat and trembling, I tried to explain what I'd seen. My supervisor gave me a long, skeptical look before quietly suggesting I take a few days off. The official report filed that night was brief. Suspicious vehicle located. Driver not found. Investigation ongoing. But I knew the truth. I don't know what those things were or why they appeared, but every time I close my eyes, I see them. Faceless, unblinking, waiting in the dark. And I can't shake the feeling that one day, they'll find me again. I didn't sleep much after that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. Those pale, faceless figures, moving in jerky, unnatural patterns just beyond the reach of my flashlight. I couldn't shake the memory of how they surrounded the car, closing in with that eerie, predatory calm. It wasn't human. It wasn't anything I could explain. I spent the next day poring over my dashcam footage. I thought maybe I could prove to myself that I wasn't going crazy, that what I saw was real. But when I hit play, the footage was grainy and glitching, like something had scrambled the signal. All I could make out was static and faint shapes in the trees. Nothing definitive. Nothing I could show anyone else. That evening, I got a call. Officer Daniels, the voice on the other end, crackled. It was Chief Grayson. I need you to come in. Now, I hesitated, clutching the phone tighter. Chief, that wasn't a request, he interrupted. His tone was sharper than usual. We've got another missing person report off County Road 53. Same location as last night. A hiker. And we need you to lead the search. I wanted to say no. God, I wanted to say no. But I couldn't. Not without sounding like a coward. And besides, I knew no one would believe me if I told them why I was so reluctant. So I suited up, grabbed my flashlight and my sidearm, and drove back out to that cursed stretch of road. By the time I arrived, the search party was already assembling. It wasn't a large group, just a handful of deputies and a couple of volunteers with dogs. The missing person, a 22-year-old named Eric Monroe, had been camping nearby with friends. They'd reported him missing that morning after he wandered off into the woods and never came back. Daniels, Grayson greeted me as I pulled up, his face grim. You're leading the West Quadrant. Stay on comms, and let us know the second you find anything. I nodded, my mouth dry. As I headed into the woods with my flashlight and radio, I felt that same suffocating sense of dread creeping over me. The trees seemed closer than they had the night before, their branches forming a twisted canopy that blocked out the moonlight. The further I went, the quieter it got. No birds, no insects, just the crunch of my boots on the undergrowth. About an hour in, I found something. It wasn't Eric, thank God, but it was unsettling all the same. A makeshift campsite, a tattered tent, a fire pit filled with cold ash, and a scattering of personal items. A backpack, a water bottle, a notebook. I crouched down to inspect the notebook, flipping it open with gloved hands. The pages were filled with frantic, scrawled writing. They're watching me. I can feel them. Faceless, silent, everywhere. I can't run. I can't hide. They're coming. My stomach churned as I flipped through page after page of the same desperate warnings. The handwriting growing messier and more erratic until it was just jagged scribbles. Daniels, you copy? Grayson's voice crackled over the radio, making me jump. Yeah, I replied, trying to steady my voice. I found a campsite. Looks like it might have belonged to the kid. Any sign of him? Not yet. Just some personal items. I'll keep looking. Copy that. Stay alert. I stuffed the notebook into my bag and pressed on, my flashlight sweeping the forest floor. That's when I saw it. movement out of the corner of my eye. I whipped the light toward it, heart hammering, but there was nothing there, just trees and shadows. Then the radio crackled again. Only this time it wasn't Grayson's voice. It was static at first, faint and garbled. Then came a sound that made my blood run cold. A low, distorted whisper, like someone speaking through a broken speaker. Come closer. I froze, gripping the radio tightly. Who's there? I demanded, my voice trembling. The whisper came again, louder this time. Shouldn't have. I turned in a slow circle, the flashlight shaking in my hand. The forest seemed darker now, the shadows deeper. My radio crackled one last time before cutting out completely, leaving me in deafening silence. That's when I heard it, the crunch of footsteps, not mine. I spun around, and there it was, one of the figures from the night before, standing motionless between two trees. Its featureless face glowed faintly in the darkness, like moonlight on bone. Then another appeared, and another. They emerged from the shadows, surrounding me in a wide circle, their heads tilting in unison as they stared, or whatever the hell they did, with those blank, alien faces. I raised my gun, my voice cracking as I shouted, "Stay back, I'll shoot." They didn't move. For a moment I thought maybe they weren't going to. But then, as if responding to some unspoken signal, they all took a step forward. And then another, and another. Panic surged through me as I backed away, my flashlight darting wildly between them. My finger was on the trigger, but I knew it wouldn't do any good. I'd seen how they reacted to bullets, or didn't react, rather. Just as they were closing in, I heard a sudden, high-pitched whine. It was coming from behind me, growing louder and louder until it was almost unbearable. The figures stopped, their heads snapping toward the sound in unison. I turned and saw a blinding light cutting through the trees, accompanied by the roar of an engine. It was Grayson, barreling toward me in his truck, his high beams slicing through the darkness. "Get in," he shouted, slamming on the brakes just feet from where I stood. I didn't hesitate. I sprinted to the passenger side, throwing myself into the cab as Grayson floored it. The figures didn't follow. They just stood there, watching as we sped away. Neither of us spoke on the drive back to town. I didn't know what to say, and Grayson didn't ask. But when we reached the station, he finally broke the silence. "You're not crazy, Daniels," he said quietly, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "I've seen them too. That was the last time I went out on a call near County Road 53. And to this day, I don't know what those things are or what they want. But I do know one thing. They're still out there, waiting. I thought I'd be able to shake it off eventually, you know? Just file it away in the dark corners of my mind where all the other terrible things I've seen as a cop live. But the memory of those faceless figures refused to fade. It clung to me like the stench of smoke after a house fire, sharp, acrid, and impossible to scrub away. Grayson tried to keep me off any assignments near County Road 53, but small-town police forces don't have the luxury of selective staffing. When another report came in just a week later, a missing dog this time, not a person, I got the call to check it out. I protested, of course, but Grayson's response was blunt. "We can't keep ignoring this, Daniels. Someone's gotta go. And you're the only one I trust not to run your mouth about what's out there." Great. Just what I wanted. A return trip to hell. I packed light. Just my flashlight, a taser, and a Glock I wasn't convinced would help if things went south. It was a quiet evening, cloudy, with the sun already sinking low on the horizon when I arrived at the site. The caller, an older man named Mr. Klein, was waiting for me near his pickup truck at the trailhead. His face was pale, and his hands shook as he described what had happened. "Scout never wanders off," he said, wringing his baseball cap in his hands. "She always comes back when I call, but not this time. I don't know what got into her. How long's she been gone?" I asked, scanning the tree-line for any signs of movement. "Couple hours. I tried calling for her, but it's like she just vanished." "Please, officer, you gotta find her." I assured him I'd do my best. even though every nerve in my body was screaming at me to get back in the car and drive as far from this place as possible. But duty is duty, right? I followed the trail deeper into the woods, calling out Scout's name as I went. The farther I got from the road, the darker it became. The sun had dipped below the horizon now, and the shadows stretched long and menacing across the forest floor. My flashlight's beam flickered slightly, and I cursed under my breath. Not now. Please, not now. After about 20 minutes, I came across something strange. A series of tracks in the dirt. Not paw prints, but something else. They were long and narrow, with what looked like claw marks at the ends. They reminded me of the crab walker footage Mike had shown me once. A creature that moved unnaturally, something that should not exist. I felt my throat tighten as I crouched to get a closer look. The tracks led off the main trail and into the dense underbrush. Against every instinct, I followed them. The air seemed colder here, heavier. My flashlight picked out faint scratches on the tree trunks, as though something with sharp claws had passed through recently. And then I heard it. A faint whimpering sound, just up ahead. "Scout?" I called, my voice barely above a whisper. The whimpering grew louder, more urgent. I pushed through the bushes, my heart pounding in my chest. When I found her, my stomach dropped. The dog was cowering in a small clearing, her tail tucked between her legs and her body trembling. Her fur was matted with mud and what looked like dried blood, but she didn't appear to be seriously injured. I reached out cautiously, murmuring soothing words, and she didn't resist as I clipped a leash to her collar. "Let's get you out of here," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But as I turned to head back to the trail, I felt it. That same suffocating presence I'd felt the last time. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end as the woods around me seemed to fall deathly silent. Not a single rustle of leaves, not even the chirp of a cricket. And then I saw them. They emerged from the shadows, one by one, their pale, faceless heads glowing faintly in the darkness. There were more of them this time, maybe a dozen, maybe more. I lost count as they formed a loose circle around me, their movements slow and deliberate. Scout let out a low, terrified whine, her body pressing tightly against my leg. My hand went to my Glock, but I knew it was useless. I'd seen what happened the last time. The figures didn't approach. They just stood there, swaying slightly, as though caught in some invisible current. And then, to my horror, one of them raised an arm and pointed. Not at me. The Scout. "No," I muttered, shaking my head. "You're not taking her." The figure tilted its head, almost as if it were confused. Then it stepped forward, its movements jerky and unnatural. The others followed, closing in slowly, their long arms reaching out as they moved. I didn't wait. I fired a warning shot into the air, the crack of the gunshot echoing through the woods. The figures didn't flinch, but something else happened. The ground beneath us began to tremble, a low, vibrating hum that grew louder and more intense with each passing second. The figures stopped, their heads snapping toward the source of the sound. I turned too, and what I saw made my blood run cold. A light, blindingly bright, was rising from the forest floor, pulsing with an almost hypnotic rhythm. It wasn't natural. It wasn't anything I could comprehend. The figures seemed drawn to it, their featureless faces tilting toward the light as they began to move away from me, their motions synchronized like a flock of birds. I didn't stick around to see what happened next. I scooped Scout into my arms, turned, and ran. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs felt like they'd give out. When I finally broke through the tree-line and saw the faint glow of Mr. Klein's truck headlights in the distance, I nearly collapsed with relief. He took one look at Scout and burst into tears, thanking me over and over. I didn't say much. What could I say? That his dog had been stalked by faceless creatures and saved by an impossible light? He'd think I was insane. I left out most of the details in my report. Missing dog found, returned to owner. End of story. But deep down, I knew it wasn't the end. Not even close. I thought that would be it. I thought I could put the events behind me, let them fade into the recesses of my memory like a bad dream. But it was never that simple. Those things, whatever they were, weren't finished with me. And the worst part? I think they wanted me to know it. A few nights after the incident with Scout, I was at home, nursing a stiff drink and trying to convince myself I wasn't losing my mind. The TV was on, though I wasn't paying much attention. It was background noise, something to distract me from the gnawing anxiety that had taken root in my chest. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text, but not from anyone in my contacts. The number was unlisted. All the message said was, "You shouldn't have taken the dog." I stared at the screen, my pulse pounding in my ears. It had to be a prank, right? Someone messing with me. But how would anyone know? I hadn't told a soul about what had happened out there. I typed back, "Who is this?" The response came almost immediately, "They're coming for you." I dropped the phone as a cold wave of fear washed over me. My first instinct was to grab my gun. My second was to check the locks on every door and window in the house. As I moved through the darkened rooms, flashlight in one hand and Glock in the other, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. That's when I saw it. Out the window, just beyond the edge of my backyard, a figure stood silhouetted against the tree-line. Its faceless head was tilted slightly, as though it were looking directly at me. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. My flashlight beam wavered as I trained it on the figure. It didn't move. It just stood there, impossibly still, like a statue carved from pale stone. Then, slowly, it raised a hand and pointed, not at me, at the house. I spun around, my heart racing. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed darker, deeper, as though something was lurking just out of sight. I turned back to the window, but the figure was gone. The phone buzzed again. "They're inside." My stomach dropped. Every instinct screamed at me to get out, to run, but I couldn't leave. This was my home. If those things were here, I had to confront them. I had to end this. I crept through the house, checking each room as I went. The living room, the kitchen, the bathroom, everything was empty. But the feeling of being watched grew stronger with every step. It was like the air itself was pressing down on me, heavy and suffocating. When I reached my bedroom, I hesitated. The door was slightly ajar, and I could see a faint light spilling out from inside. My hand tightened on the Glock as I pushed the door open. The room was empty. At least that's what I thought at first. Then I saw the mirror. The light was coming from the mirror on my dresser. But it wasn't a reflection of the room. It was something else entirely. The surface shimmered like water, rippling with a faint, otherworldly glow. And in the center of the mirror, I saw them, the figures, dozens of them standing in a line that seemed to stretch into infinity. They weren't in my room, they were somewhere else, somewhere beyond. But they were watching me, their faceless heads tilted in unison, their long, spindly arms hanging at their sides. I took a step back, my mind racing. This wasn't possible. This couldn't be real. Then one of them moved. It stepped forward, closer to the surface of the mirror, its featureless face pressing against the glass as though it were trying to break through. The surface rippled again, and I heard it. A low, distorted whisper that sent chills down my spine. "Come with us." My legs felt like lead. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The figure's hand pressed against the glass, and for a moment, I thought it was going to step through. But then the glow flickered and dimmed, and the figure froze. It tilted its head again, almost as if it were listening to something. Then it turned and walked back into the line. The others followed, disappearing one by one until the mirror returned to normal. I stood there, trembling, my gun still clenched tightly in my hand. The phone buzzed again. "You're lucky tonight, but you won't always be." That was the last straw. I grabbed my keys and bolted, not stopping until I was in my squad car and speeding toward the station. I didn't care what time it was or how crazy I sounded. I needed Grayson to know. When I got there, he was waiting for me, a grim look on his face. "I knew you'd come," he said, gesturing for me to sit. "You're not the first to experience this, Daniels. And you won't be the last." "What the hell is going on, Chief?" I demanded, slamming my hands on the desk. "What are they? What do they want?" Grayson sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. "I don't know," he admitted, But they've been around a long time, longer than you or me. And once they've noticed you—" He trailed off, his expression dark. I leaned back in the chair, my mind racing. "So what do we do? How do we stop them?" Grayson didn't answer right away. He just stared at me, his eyes heavy with something I couldn't quite place. Guilt, maybe, or fear. "You can't stop them," he said finally. "All you can do is survive." You'd think after everything I'd seen, everything I'd survived, I'd have learned my lesson. But there's something about living with fear that changes you. It wears you down, grinds you into something raw. You start to question everything. Was that shadow in the corner real? Was the creak in the hallway just the house settling? Or are they here, creeping closer, waiting for the right moment to strike? That's how I was living, on edge, barely sleeping, my nerves frayed to the point of breaking. And then the final straw came. It was a quiet night at the station. The kind where you pray nothing happens because you just want to get through the shift without adding to the endless nightmares piling up in your head. I was at my desk, staring blankly at a half-filled incident report, when the call came through. "Daniels, we've got a situation," Grayson said, his voice tight. "It's the old Walther property out on Route 19. Neighbor called in, said they saw lights inside. The place has been abandoned for years." I didn't want to go. Every instinct screamed at me to hand this off to someone else, to find an excuse to stay behind. But I couldn't. Not with Grayson breathing down my neck. Not with the lingering shame of knowing I'd already run from this too many times. So I grabbed my gear, told myself it was just squatters or some kids messing around, and headed out. The Walther property was the kind of place that gave you the creeps even in broad daylight. A crumbling farmhouse surrounded by overgrown fields, its windows shattered and its roof sagging under the weight of decades of neglect. But tonight, there was something different. The lights the neighbor had reported weren't your typical flashlights or lanterns. As I pulled up, I saw a faint, bluish glow emanating from the second-floor windows, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. I killed the engine and sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I didn't want to go in. God help me, I didn't want to go in. But I had no choice. The front door creaked open with a groan that echoed through the empty house. My flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing peeling wallpaper, broken furniture, and a thick layer of dust that seemed to cling to everything. "Police!" I called out, my voice sounding far too small in the cavernous silence. "If anyone's in here, come out now." No response, just the faint hum of that strange, pulsing light coming from upstairs. I moved cautiously, every creak of the floorboards beneath my boots sending a jolt of adrenaline through my system. The air was heavy, thick with the smell of mildew and something else. Something metallic, like rust or blood. As I climbed the stairs, the glow grew brighter, spilling out from the doorway of what must have once been a bedroom. My flashlight flickered, and I muttered a curse under my breath, smacking it against my palm. When I reached the top, I stopped dead in my tracks. The room was empty, except for the light. It wasn't coming from a bulb or a lamp or anything man-made. It floated in the center of the room, an orb of shifting, pulsating energy, its surface rippling like liquid mercury. And then I saw them. They were standing just beyond the light, their faceless forms barely visible in the flickering glow. More of them than I'd ever seen before, packed shoulder to shoulder in perfect silence. Watching, waiting. I raised my gun, my hands trembling. "Stay back," I shouted, though my voice cracked under the weight of my terror. The figures didn't move. They just stood there, their heads tilting in unison as if in response to my words. And then the orb began to change. Its surface twisted and expanded, shapes emerging from within. Faces, human faces, screaming in silent agony. I stumbled back, nearly dropping my flashlight, as the orb pulsed brighter and brighter, filling the room with a blinding light. The figures began to move, their long, spindly arms reaching out toward me. I fired, the shots ringing out deafeningly in the confined space. But just like before, the bullets had no effect. They passed through the figures as if they weren't there, slamming into the walls behind them. "Daniels!" The voice came from behind me, low and distorted. I spun around, and there he was, Grayson. Or at least it looked like him. But his eyes, they were empty, black voids that seemed to suck in the light around them. "You can't fight them," he said, his voice layered with something unnatural. "You belong to them now." I don't remember how I got out. 1 minute I was in that room, surrounded by the faceless figures and the blinding orb, and the next I was outside, stumbling through the overgrown fields, my chest heaving and my mind a blur of terror. When I finally reached my car, I collapsed against the side, my body shaking uncontrollably. The house was dark now, the glow gone, the figures nowhere to be seen. But I knew they were still there, watching, waiting. That was my last shift. I quit the force the next day, packed my things, and left town without so much as a goodbye. I don't know where Grayson is, or if he even survived that night. Hell, I don't know if I survived that night, not really. Because no matter where I go, they follow. I see them in the corners of my vision, standing just outside the glow of a streetlight or the edge of my headlights. I hear them in the whispers of static on my radio, in the faint creak of floorboards at night. And I know deep down that one day they'll stop waiting. One day they'll come for me. And when they do, there'll be no running, no hiding, only the light. I wish I could tell you I found a way out, that I beat them, escaped, or at least figured out what they were. But the truth is, they're still here. They've always been here, watching from the edges of my life like shadows I can never outrun. I've come to accept that they're a part of me now, woven into the fabric of my existence. And the worst part? I think I know why. The final straw came 3 nights ago. I had been staying in a motel off some nameless highway, trying to put as much distance as I could between myself and County Road 53. The place was a dump. Cracked linoleum floors, flickering neon lights outside, and a front desk clerk who looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. It didn't matter. I just needed somewhere to hide. I'd been lying in bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling, when the TV turned on by itself. Static filled the screen, crackling loud enough to make me flinch. I grabbed the remote and turned it off, only for it to come back on again, the volume even louder this time. That's when I saw it. The static began to shift, forming shapes, images. At first, it was blurry, indistinct. But then the picture sharpened and I saw myself, sitting on the bed in that very room holding the remote. Only it wasn't just me. In the reflection of the cracked mirror behind me, one of them stood, its pale, faceless form looming over my shoulder. My heart stopped as I turned to look, but there was nothing there. Just the empty room and the hum of the TV. The static on the screen shifted again, and now it showed the farmhouse on Route 19. The same bluish glow pulsed from the upstairs window, just as it had that night. But this time, the light wasn't confined to the house. It spread, crawling across the fields and into the surrounding trees like tendrils of liquid fire. And then I heard it, a low, distorted whisper that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "It's time." The TV shut off, plunging the room into darkness. I sat there, gripping the edge of the bed, my chest heaving as the whisper echoed in my ears. When the knock came at the door, I nearly screamed. It was soft at first, barely audible. Then it grew louder, more insistent. I forced myself to stand, my legs shaking as I approached the door. "Who's there?" I called, my voice barely above a whisper. No answer, just the knocking, steady and relentless. I reached for the doorknob, my hand trembling. When I finally pulled the door open, the hallway outside was empty. No sign of anyone, no sound, just a faint, cold breeze that brushed against my skin. And then I saw it. At the far end of the hallway, standing in the flickering light of the exit sign, was one of them. Its featureless head tilted slightly, as if it were studying me. And then, slowly, it raised an arm and pointed down the hallway. I knew what it wanted. It didn't have to say a word. The message was clear. Come with us. I don't know why I followed. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was resignation. Or maybe, deep down, I'd always known this moment would come. I stepped out into the hallway, my feet moving as if they weren't my own. The figure turned and began to walk, its movements slow and deliberate. I followed. It led me out of the motel and into the woods beyond. The air was thick and heavy, the shadows pressing in from all sides. I could see the glow in the distance now, the same pulsing light I'd seen at the farmhouse. It grew brighter with every step, drawing me closer like a moth to a flame. When we reached the clearing, they were waiting for me. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, standing in perfect silence around the glowing orb at the center. It was larger now, its surface swirling with colors and shapes that defied comprehension. Faces appeared within it, faces I recognized. Grayson, the woman from the CCTV footage, even Scout, the dog. Their eyes stared back at me, empty and lifeless. The figure leading me stopped and turned. It raised a hand, beckoning me forward. I stepped into the circle, the light washing over me like a tidal wave. It wasn't warm or cold. It was alive, pulsing with a strange, alien rhythm that seemed to sync with my heartbeat. As I stood there, staring into the light, I felt something shift. A weight lifted from my chest, replaced by a strange, terrible calm. For the first time in months, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't anything. The light grew brighter, engulfing everything. I felt myself dissolving into it, my thoughts unraveling like threads pulled from a fraying sweater. And just before the darkness took me, I heard the whisper one last time. Welcome home. I woke up in my car, parked at the edge of County Road 53. The sun was rising, its rays cutting through the mist that clung to the trees. I felt different, lighter, empty. When I checked the rearview mirror, I saw my reflection staring back at me. But it wasn't my face. Not really. The eyes were wrong. Too dark. Too empty. And for the first time, I realized what they'd been trying to tell me all along. You don't fight the light. You don't run from it. You become it. And now, I'm just waiting for the next person to notice me, to follow me, to step into the light and take my place. Because the truth is, it's not over. It's never over. Not for them. And not for you.